because a lot of people have been asking about IEPs and IEP process and what it should look like, what is the timing around it. And so I figured I would just do a talk, not a talk, a discussion where you guys can ask questions and I can answer questions, and a question another parent has, of course, somebody else will have as well, just about the process and initiating the process of the IEP. I can start with just what the overview looks like, which might be helpful of like the big picture timeline, and then we can go into specific questions. So first, if your child has never had an IEP, the first part of the process is just initiating the evaluation to see if your child is eligible for an IEP. So all you do with that is contact your public school. So like if I live in Lexington, I'm going to call the Lexington town, like their education town, and then I'm going to ask for an IEP to be started for my child. You could contact your preschool if you're in the preschool age, or if you're in kindergarten, then you would contact your direct kindergarten, or you just contact the Lexington Town Education Center or whatever town you're in, and then ask for a process to start. What that does is then engage the special education team in knowing that you would like an evaluation to see if your child is eligible. So then what they will do is reach out to you and schedule an initial meeting to meet your child and then start an evaluation process. One of the biggest questions I get around that is, what should we agree to? Agree to all the things, because it is free. And what you want to do is see if they find your child eligible. So the more information they gather, the more they will know about your child. So if they're asking for a psychological evaluation, an observation, which you always want to have them observe at Fuse, that's a big point, because we want them to see how much support your child needs at a school. You always want a speech eval, you always want an OT. If they'll offer you PT, you always want to take all the evaluations you can, because then you get an incredible amount of information about your child, regardless of, great, maybe they don't need PT, but now you have an eval to let you know, here's where their strengths and weaknesses are. And if they are eligible for services, now you know why they're eligible for speech services or OT services. So that process is the evaluation process, and that is a 45-day process that they have to do the eval. So the next question that many people ask is, when should we start the process of the IEP? And what you want to do is backtrack. So if you're at Fuse this year and you want to think about next year, we want to have that meeting by March so that we know, is my child eligible? Are they not eligible? And we're going to be looking at other options. And so then you backtrack, and then you think about, okay, I've got to initiate the process around January, because they have 45 school days, which in fact is a very long amount of time with all the holidays and whatever. So the goal is you're initiating the process if your child has no IEP by January, so that we have a meeting by March. And for new families, we always join that process, but you have to invite us, because the public school is not going to invite us, because we are your private placement. And so you have to let the public school know that you would like myself, the teachers, and if you do speech and OT, to join. And then they will send us the Zoom link, but that has to be initiated by you. Even if you're 3 years into an IEP, but you're new to Fuse, you tell the public school that you want to have us, and then we will join. You obviously have to give us the date and time, and then we will join via Zoom for that. So then you have your evaluation process. You get all your reports. It's not going to share if your child gets an IEP or not an IEP. Then we have a meeting, which then the first part of the meeting is all the specialists share their findings from the evals in a very short little 5-minute segment. Each person speaks 5 minutes. And then they will show a flow chart, which you can look up online. You can just Google IEP eligibility flow chart, and that shows you each of the criteria that have to be met for your child to warrant services, which then allows them to get an IEP. So it's typically around, do they have a diagnosis? Do they require special accommodations and special education to access curriculum? Um, uh, it- I think there's like one more, but it's really around a diagnosis and can they access the curriculum without services, accommodations, and special education? And then they flow through this chart of what deems them eligible. Then it gets into accommodations, services, and placement. Placement is always last, which is a bummer because all you as parents want to know is your placement first. But placement is always you have to, a goal warrants a service, service warrants a placement. So you will never know your placement until the goals are created. And if it's a goal around social communication, then that's going to allow you to get a service of speech therapy. And then when you have speech therapy service, then that would either be in the classroom or outside the classroom. And depending on how many services your child gets, then that decrees what kind of a placement your child gets within the integrated classroom, sub-separate classroom, or some variety in between that. Um, so that's kind of the timeline and where you go with it. Every year, once your child and most Fuse kids, if we do a good job advocating and the teacher does a good job of sharing supports, most kids will get an IEP of some variety. There's also a 504, which is just accommodations, not services like speech therapy or OT therapy, but accommodations like sensory integration in the classroom or being able to take breaks, things like that. But the IEP is a more intensive wraparound service for your child. Um, and that once your child is deemed eligible for an IEP, then you have an IEP meeting every year. And then every 3 years, you have that evaluation process again. I think what's also important to share for Fuse kids, just because you get an IEP, many families will stay at Fuse, but carry an IEP throughout the time they're at Fuse, because then when they're ready to transition in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, it's a smooth transition because we know the team knows your child, and we've grown together in terms of goals and services. So by the time your child is graduating from Fuse, we may have held an IEP meeting every year and the school has observed every year. But then when they're ready to transition and utilize the public school, it's a very seamless process around we all are in agreement that he needs pull out for speech, a pull out for OT, and some extra support in the classroom at a certain time or whatever. Um, so I think what's important is kind of knowing that you can hold an IEP and stay at Fuse, and those things simultaneously coexist in a symbiotic way where we're working with the public school and the public school is working with us. Ideally, some public schools are not as easy as other public schools, but that can happen. And then when it's time to transition, we help that transition happen, hopefully smoothly. The other thing to always do is ask if you're getting a placement that you're not totally, like, let's say a sub-separate placement, which would be for most of our kids at Fuse, not ideal because they're in a more integrated setting here. You want to do an observation of that setting. You are allowed, and it is your right to observe any setting that your child's going to go into, because many public schools will call Fuse a sub-separate setting, but that's not the same definition of sub-separate as a public school sub-separate. So, which sub-separate is like 5 kids to 2 teachers, which sounds great because that is what Fuse is. But the range of abilities of kids in a public school small class size is quite different than at Fuse. So you always want to observe and go in eyes wide open of what you're getting from the public school before you make a decision to transition to the public school. Um, That was the fast
Can I
Cliff
ask a
Notes.
quick question about that? Sorry,
Yes.
I just joined. Are you able to observe the the integrated setting, like the Gen Ed classroom too, or do you only have a right to observe the
No,
separate
you're able to
setting?
observe both. They're going to give you a little more pushback. No, you should be able to observe both. I've had many families observe both. You certainly want to, um, oh, sorry. You certainly want to observe the integrated because you want to see how big that class size is. And for your child, you want to sit in there and see what they're going to be a part of for sure. Does that answer that?
Yeah.
Other question?
No need to apologize.
Oh, wait. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, Sarah, could you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can
I
hear
thought
you.
my Siri was on for some reason. Okay. Other questions?
What is the, or I can ask questions. If there's no one else right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
What about like if, so, full disclosure, we went through an IEP process last year and it was this weird situation where the professionals we were working with at the time thought it was like woefully inadequate. They advised us to like, when we weren't sure if we were going to go fuse or there, they advised us to write a letter basically saying like, we are accepting this because we feel like we have no choice, but it is woefully inadequate to like get disagreement on the record. But then they responded, and like legally, you have the option to reject a proposed IEP. I guess I'm wondering like where the wiggle room is to like push for a different plan or different accommodations for your child.
Well, what I would say, so I'll never trump a neuropsych for how they say it, but they don't. If you say you're disappointed, the public school really doesn't care. Like
Yeah,
they're gonna
precisely.
say to you,
That
sorry, but this is what we offer. So what you want to do is on the IEP, there's like check boxes. Check
hmm
is, do you agree with the placement? And checkbox two or something is, do you agree with the service delivery grid? So
hmm
you're not going to check that. And you're going to then write a letter. What I would say, or what I have learned from advocates,
Yeah.
is you want to share what you're not accepting. So let's say, hypothetically, for your child, they did not offer speech therapy. And
hmm
you believe, and based on their evaluation or based on your outside evaluation, you believe he should get speech therapy. What you're going to say you're not checking you don't agree, you don't accept the service delivery. So then you're writing in the email, based on this, this, and this, and you'd have to have some points, backups. We believe my son should receive speech therapy, and we would like to reconvene to discuss in more detail. So they have to reconvene with you. So what you want to do is make bullets of what you don't agree with and then call for a reconvene.
Okay. And is that like, so, Cooper was offered not one-on-one speech, but a pullout to be in a speech group, like once a week for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
If you do not agree to that box, does that like forego all speech until you work out a different solution? Or you know what
Was
I
he
mean?
offered other speech?
He was just offered this speech group that was supposed to function
So
as,
what it doesn't forego, it foregoes, you're saying you don't agree to a group because you think he needs one-to-one. It
yeah,
doesn't mean you agree to OT or something
yeah,
else, so he
yeah.
can go to Newton and get OT,
Mhm.
but you're saying you don't want a group, so that is on hold until you make an agreement around it.
Okay. Thank you.
And the other thing to note off of that, but not your question, but to note is if you have an IEP and you have services, you can opt out of their placement, but accept their services.
Mhm.
So hypothetically for Cooper, if he got that one-to-one speech, you could go on a Wednesday, a Thursday, on whatever your half day is, and receive services at your public school, which is always a great way for them to get to know the child.
Uh-huh. So like you can get them to like tack it on during non-school hours.
Well, so you have to be very careful about how you ask for it because they're never going to do it on not school hours. But and they're going to be very clear that you have to work within their schedule, but
Mhm.
you can say Cooper has availability from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock on Thursdays. Does anything in there work for you? You can't, they are not a private speech, so they're not going to work around your schedule. But if you give them open time frames, they might work with you.
Okay.
So some kids will go very early in the morning, like the 8 o'clock, and then they just get here a little late, or they'll go on the half day.
Okay. And get speed and get whatever they get.
Yes,
Okay.
if we think it's worth it, and if you pretty much know you're gonna go to that school, then it's nice for them to know the child.
For sure. Okay.
Can I ask a question sort of similar to that?
Yeah.
So for Jackson, like he got 30 minutes of speech and 30 minutes of OT sort of as like walk-ins.
Yes.
And so, I didn't really agree with the placement of him in general education in Sharon Public Schools otherwise, but I also didn't want to go through like months of back and forth with them and sort of delay the services they were offering. So I think eventually I accepted the IEP and obviously he's at Fuse. But I think for, when he graduates out of Fuse, is there any way for us at that point in time, sorry, this is my daughter, Charlotte,
Ah,
um, for us to push for like something, I guess, more than just a purely general ed classroom where he gets some pull-out services twice a week? Or is
Um,
that sort of like ship has sailed?
no, 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 the ship has not sailed. It depends on what Sharon has, and that would go for any district. So what you don't want for Jackson is to not agree to the general ed classroom and then he's in a small, like I was talking about, sub-separate, because that would be a downgrade from Fuse. But you would want more support if they don't have an in the middle. Like what I love in some districts is the co-taught model,
Okay.
where they have like maybe 3 or 4 Jackson-ish type kids that are ready for integrated but need more support. That's my ideal middle,
Yeah.
because there's no small class size. There's no Fuse type classroom in the public school. If you find out, you have to do a lot of deep diving in Sharon if there's a co-taught, like Newton has a co-taught. But if you find out there's a co-taught, then you want to, our next IEP, you want to not agree to the placement
Yeah.
and ask for a co-taught placement. If
Okay.
there is not a middle ground between sub-separate and full integration, then you're agreeing to the placement, but you're not agreeing to the services, because then you want to push more to get more support in the classroom so that you can kind of create your own co-taught of like, maybe you put an additional support in the classroom, not a one-to-one for him, but an additional support. So when he needs some extra breaks or when he needs some extra accommodations, that someone in there to give them in a fluid way.
Okay. I, d- I mean, I don't think Sharon has something like the co-taught
I
program.
don't think
Yeah.
so, honestly, but
Okay.
so then we'd be pushing for more supports so that he can feel successful in the general ed classroom.
Okay. Got it. Got
You
it.
don't want to go backwards
Right.
and or go and observe first, but I've seen Sharon the small class, like the sub-separate, and it would not be a great fit for him or any of our kids at Fuse. So then you want to really push to create a small like feel in a bigger classroom.
Okay. Can I also ask about the SOAR program? Because I think that was the only program that I've heard of within Sharon for like specifically autistic kids. I don't know if you have any experience with that.
Um, so that is kind of a middle. What I would do, I don't know enough about it, but I know there's like a SOAR 1 and SOAR 2. So there's levels. So what you would want, and that's the case in many schools. So you would want to go and observe before our IEP meeting, go and observe so you can see how much are they integrated and how much are they not, because
Mhm.
that can be more of an integrated, but he has a space to like take a break, do more one-to-one academics type stuff.
Right. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yes. And that would be a definite observation to see what it really is like. Because of course it sounds amazing, by definition, but you want to make sure, one, that it's not like heavily ABA because he doesn't need that, and nor is that what he's used to, and that it's really a holistic integration.
Right. Yeah. I think unfortunately they are heavily ABA, but I will look into it. Yeah.
So that depends on the levels. Like maybe SOAR 1 is for kids who really intensively need a one-to-one. But then my hope is that next level SOAR, whatever it's called, is more integrated and more holistic.
Okay.
That's
Right.
where you have to do a little due diligence before to know, because they're not going to describe it perfectly in the IEP meeting.
Right.
You almost want to
Okay.
add, like, I'm always a big fan of parents getting on the like Facebook groups for your town. So get on a Sharon Facebook group of like who has a kid in SOAR and tell me about it, or then like private message them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Lauren, I've
Yes.
had a few like friends and colleagues recommend I look at a educate or hire an educational advocate to help with the process, which I haven't done yet. Are you like enough of a resource that you can help with questions, or do you usually recommend people hire someone, or
It,
what are your
I
thoughts?
mean, so we've had both. I mean, but he has, you haven't gone through no, you have gone through the process. He
No,
already
I have
has an
not.
IEP.
No, he
Oh,
doesn't.
he is not, he has nothing. So this is his first evaluation process. Okay,
Yeah.
so then you don't need one until you need one. So like there are families who are not getting what they need, and I can advocate
Yeah.
like so if you are a family who is not getting what you need and we've tried, then an advocate is incredibly helpful. But if you are just starting, and Waylon is, I think, pretty good, there's no reason to go like guns blazing until you need to
Yeah.
have ammunition that you know you're not getting what you need. So there's no, I would say let's do the process, because I can advocate well, and the teachers are all really good at it because they've been doing it with me for a long time. But then
Mhm.
there are some times we just hit a wall, and that's when I always pull in an advocate, or it's an there's a difference between an educational consultant and an advocate, but I think advocate is what you mean, correct?
Yes. The
Yes.
consultant I know is more like in the background. They don't come to the meeting, but you might have questions and
Right.
things.
A consultant is great to look at the fine tooth details of an IEP. But if we need to push and they are egregiously not servicing
Right.
your child, that's where an advocate comes in, because they get on and be more just adversarial about it.
Right. So you don't recommend hiring them. I mean, from my conversations with Waylon, they have like talked about giving us what I think we would need, but like I don't know if usually you get this surprise that like, hey, nope, you don't get that.
You may, but I really have never had a Wayland meeting that has gone badly.
Right.
But I maybe would have said that about Sharon 2 years ago, and now Sharon is it's all depends on who's in charge. So um I would say let's ride it until we decide, and then I will tell you honestly, like we're not getting anywhere, and see what happens.
Okay, that makes sense.
Can I ask a question about so to your point about in a gen ed classroom, beyond just speech and OT, like Liam's original IEP when he was 3 said placement in the integrated preschool program plus speech and OT. That if moving into kindergarten where you're in a general ed classroom, what are the other supports you would want beyond speech and OT? And I've to your point about ABA, I've in talking to people from different towns, I've heard the term like behavioral therapist thrown around, or like a shared aid. And I'm not sure how that applies like per town and what that means, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, every town is a little bit different, but so integrated preschool is very different from a kindergarten in terms of services, because in integrated preschool, typically there's one lead teacher and 2 to 3 assistants. So you're getting more support regardless. No, it doesn't matter. Like that's what Andover has, that's what every preschool has, is more support. So I would say, In a kindergarten, you have to get more than just the placement because it's not going to be enough. What you want is you don't want an aid. I mean, a shared aid would be okay. I'd be okay with a shared aid. You don't want a one-to-one aid because what child does not want like a Sherpa next to them doing everything for them? We don't want that, and that's not what they've had at Fuse. But a shared aid would be fine to give another support in the classroom or just an additional staff in the classroom to be able to give Liam or whoever breaks and like let them have a moment before, like if they need a decompression moment or a regulation moment, that they have someone to take them because the teacher literally cannot do that, and you need someone to help them so they're not exploding throughout the day. So a shared aid is great. Um, and or what there's many other things you can ask for, which I think are important. One is support at recess, huge. Our kids going from our highly supported recess to 100-kid recess fail. And so the more support that you can get at recess, the better. And sometimes with a shared aid, that's their break time, which is antithesis of what we want. That we want them to be on at recess. So support at recess. Um, Lunch bunch, huge, because going into a big lunch, like our kids are ready for a lot, but it's these big social times that are what we want to gradually introduce rather than throwing them in deep. So support at lunch, support at recess, and then if you can't get a shared aid, classroom support at more unstructured times is really important around, like, especially for kindergarten, morning choice or afternoon choice time. That's when an additional support is really helpful. Or just social groups. That's very much coming from Fuse. Asking for a social group is not out of the norm because they're coming from a school where a social group is basically run throughout the day. So asking for social groups through a social worker or added speech, not taking away a speech therapy session, but an added social group session of a speech therapist is great.
Okay, that's helpful. Can I, the people who, so whether it's a shared aid or someone who's kind of sitting in the classroom, like are those people trained in special education? Because I've heard
No.
that often they're not, and I've heard that sometimes it's like, I one qualification I heard is you need 2 years of college in literally anything, could be cosmetology, and then you can qualify, which like terrifies me. So like
It's pretty
how?
true. I mean, yes, and you can ask part of your IEP if you get a shared aid, which is harder and harder and harder to get now. You can ask for them to be trained. You can ask for them to be part of all consultation meetings around your child. So they consult with the teacher, they consult with the speech therapist, they consult with the OT. You can ask for them to have specific training in I don't like to say just in like autism because then it's going to go a behavioral lean, but more social emotional regulation, which is more leaning towards what we do at Fuse. Um, but correct, you can't control who the aide is.
If I may, the follow on that, I'm just trying to get a sense as to at what point in the process can we introduce like the, you know, IEP goal ideas that may derive from you all at Fuse or, the service delivery. My recollection is when we did it for Dalton, this was maybe 2 years ago. Um, I feel like when we arrived at the IEP meeting, like they had already had it set up and we might have gotten the draft like 2 days before, which troubled me. But, I wasn't educated enough about the process to really do anything. And at that point, we had decided we're going to Fuse anyway. So, but
Yes.
now I'm like, we eventually need to make this transition, and I'm just concerned about showing up at the meeting, even with you all support your presence, like that being the first time that they have a substantive understanding of what you all think he may need in an integrated classroom in the public school system.
So that's where it goes back to like maybe Christine's question around advocating. That is where we go really hard on
Okay.
that, like if their goal, and this is like made up but not made up, that Dalton says hi to three people during the day.
Hmm.
Maggie sits there and says, here is what our goal is,
Yeah.
and we are happy to send you this goal. So they always get the Fuse progress reports. So Dalton
Okay.
has his from last year. So they know what we're working on. And in a meeting, most districts know that when you have an outside team coming in, you can't create the goals ahead of time. So we typically sit in the meetings and create the goals. If, like you're saying, they come with goals, which can happen, we then alter the goals because that's where like we know the child and we push hard to say that may be a goal that works for another child, but here's what works for our child, for like Dalton. And so we alter that goal. We alter their goals as all of them, speech therapy, OT, because we know the child better. And
Okay.
we do get very pushy around that.
Okay. Is that when you say you cannot prepare it in advance, is that like concept of predetermination? I just saw that floating around somewhere and I'm like haven't looked at the regulations yet. But what I don't like is I mean I can recognize that like this meeting's also productive and we're gonna, sort of fine tune the goals as a result of the meeting. My concern is if it's presented in a way in which that's the final meeting. You have to make a decision within X amount of days. That's what I don't like because a lot of parents are not well versed on, sort of the legal obligations of the system. And although I'm a lawyer, this is not my area. So
Yeah,
it's one of
it's a
those things
different
where
area.
I'm like, what's going on? And so I just, that's the part that scares me is that like the stuff that you don't know and they're not going to volunteer it, particularly for kids who are mildly just,
Correct.
divergent as a lot of kids are from Fuse.
Yes. So one, you never have to agree to anything in the meeting. And just like someone else asked, we can call four more meetings if
Okay.
we're not liking what they're saying. And that's where I can give you my advice, but then if we're into meeting three, or at the end of meeting two, if we're not even in the same world, that's when an advocate's really helpful.
Okay. Okay.
But in the meeting, if they come in with a predetermined goal and we don't agree to it, you're right as a parent is it's team and it's like a capitalized team because it stands for something. But everyone has to be in agreement
Yep.
to that goal for it to be on your IEP. They can say, and it's happened in IEPs where, well, we agree to disagree, but that's when you then write your email saying, we don't agree to these services because we didn't agree to the goal. And here's what we would like. And so then it goes to a meeting two or then to a mediation. And that's when you then get someone like more specialized than me.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate
So
that.
nothing is in stone until you agree to it, and it may just be more meetings. But sometimes I would say like when they see there are people that do know, they can't like
Mhm.
theoretically pull the wool over your eyes when they see us on the meeting. So
Yeah.
it definitely changes the dynamic.
Yeah. That's helpful. I'll obviously be in touch as we go through the process. I just felt like the last time around, my concern is that they do the evaluations, and obviously they have all these experts, and a lot of the kids that are in the Fuse environment, because of their divergence relatively mild, the school districts because they're trying to save on money. They default to like, oh, this is, like Dalton, I think, walked into one with OT and he wrote his name. He was three at the time. And she was like, well, he can write at three. So like,
He's good
which
to
is
go.
more advanced than his peers. So then it was like no OT other than a consult with the teacher. And I was like,
Yes.
that's not how it works. And my son literally will freeze up when he's around peers. Like will shut down, would be not be able to do demonstrate any of his skills. And so that's the piece that I'm like concerned about because like you all know that. Like you, you obviously are educating him for 2 years, but I can see in the middle of the evaluation process them drawing very broad conclusions about the supports he need based on, meeting went from 30 minutes here and an hour there. And
Yes.
that's why I'm raising this. I just want to, and I suspect
That
other
is
parents
true.
have
And
the same.
they will make
Yeah.
very broad sweeping
Yes.
because all of our kids have strong language, have
Yes.
strong
Exactly.
capabilities, but the abilities they have in with other peers in a larger environment looks very different.
Yes.
that's one reason I always say to have them come and observe, because they're going to see great things Dalton can do. They're also can see where he needs support
Yeah.
in different areas. And we can, not that we would ever set up any kids to fail, but we can set up a situation that we would know Dalton would have a little bit more tricky time in, to show them, okay, this is great, but oh wait, put him in sports with 15 kids. That's trickier for him, or something like that. So that's where the observation is really great. And anytime a school observes, then I'm kind of make it so that they have to meet with the teacher. So I
Okay.
know when their observation ends, and I'll be like, oh, we have 10 minutes. Let's meet with the teacher. So then his teacher can share where he gets more support as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's helpful.
Are they allowed to refuse an observation? Because that happened to us with Andover. Granted, it didn't matter because we were at Fuse, but they pushed back really hard on coming to observe.
Um, I guess. I mean, you can also say, oh, wait, we'll make it really easy for you. We'll Zoom you in. Like, we can Zoom them into the classroom.
That's true.
I really think for so many of our kids, just like Teray was saying, Liam one-to-one with an adult is going to crush it. He would love that time, but in the classroom is where they would see what kind of support all of our kids need. So,
Mhm.
I would push on it, or connect me with them, and then they will know they can't
Okay.
refuse it. Unless you didn't check it off. Well, no, because now you're in the process. It's past the evaluation process. So no, I mean, it's part of what he holds an IEP, correct? Or he does not hold
He
it?
does. Yeah, this happened back when we were in the middle of the eval. We had suggested like, please come and observe him at Fuse, and they
Oh,
basically
that's
just kept
right.
saying no in crafty ways.
Yeah, no, they just, no, they can't really, yeah, they were being crafty and like, whatever. No, they can't really deny it.
Okay.
Sorry, one last question.
Yes.
So if and when, Jackson gets to the point where he's going to graduate Fuse, can he get like everything reevaluated for placement and everything, even though his 3 years isn't technically up?
Sorry, I'm listening to I'm just realizing
Oh,
And she disconnected. Sarah, you're in charge
yes.
now.
Christine, you're the host now.
You know?
Lauren and I were talking before, so I was the first one on
Good.
here.
This is helpful, because I think a lot of us are like, whoa, like, well, what are we about to get ourselves into? So,
I know.
You hear all these like
Yeah.
horror stories where people are like, I had
yes.
this IEP meeting and my kids got nothing.
Yep.
And
That's
sounds like
like Tyree, exactly. Like, yeah, it was like they
our
had
kids
a
do
list,
well
and he had an
one-on-one.
advocate
So
there. Like, we had
Yeah.
our neuropsych and his old school.
Yeah. And a
Oh,
lot of
Yeah.
municipalities are running low on funding. I'm on Wakefield's finance committee, so that's a thing that we're talking about.
yeah.
So special education services are very expensive for towns, so that's my concern. Like kids that go to Fuse, that's why I kept making that point about like they don't look like a lot of kids who may have level 3 ASD or other challenges. So school districts will try to keep the service delivery like very minor, and it may not necessarily help your child to meet the curriculum. So that's the advocacy piece, but it's hard because it's like it's a complicated process, and either you pay for an advocate, or that's the piece that concerns me. But yeah, these districts don't have as much money. Go ahead.
Well, just with Coop, it was like they would give him like a variety of tests for a particular aptitude. And so he would do really badly in something, but then really well in something else. And then he'd average out of
Oh,
qualifying
yeah.
for support.
Yeah.
And so it was just, and I remember the wonderful quote that didn't change anything was the neuropsych said, like, that is the most preposterous thing I've ever heard. Because Jess Cooper just didn't like to read.
Yeah.
He is 4. Like, he loves books. This is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Lauren, we were running the meeting while you
Yeah,
were
good. I don't know why
just
my computer is not charging.
turn to a parent support group.
Great, great. I'm happy for it. Keep going. But I know, Grace, you had a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering if, by the time he graduates Fuse, and is going to go back to public school, if his IEP, if it hasn't been 3 years yet, can he still be reevaluated and, like the placement and everything be amended from what it is now? Or do
You
you
can
have
ask.
to? Oh no.
I believe that it's
My understanding is that you can ask for, there's this concept called the amendment IEP. So, but the problem is it has to be backed up by data. So that's where like the insight from the teachers at Fuse and Lauren and them is going to be helpful. Any insight you get from any service provider, whether it be speech and OT that he gets at the current school, an IEP can always be amended during that process. You're technically not
Okay.
locked in by law. But again,
Okay.
they're not going to tell you that. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Right, right. Yeah, they don't
uh,
tell you anything.
no, no, they're not. They're like, you figure it out. So I'm going to have to go start digging through the regulations. But yeah,
Yeah,
They
The other
okay.
also
thing
have, at
I've
least at Newton, they want to reevaluate Coop because, if time has passed and they've been in a supportive environment like Fuse,
mhm,
it's likely that their needs will decline. So they have an incentive to
yeah,
reevaluate to make the determination that they need fewer supports than initially offered.
yep.
Right.
That was the point. Yep.
The other thing
Yeah.
I've heard from others that you have to be really careful about doing is agreeing to reduce services at any point. If you agree to it once in writing, like if they're like, "Hey, on Tuesday the speech person is out. We're thinking we'll just skip, we'll skip OT or speech that day." Like
Hmm.
maybe that's too
Yeah.
specific of an example, but like I had a friend who they agreed to limit something. And then when she went back to be like, wait, why is he not receiving speech anymore? They were like, oh, well, you agreed to remove that from his IEP. It was like, if you agree at any point, or even to like let the, the group works person do his,
Hmm.
what the social worker is supposed to do on the playground, whatever, like it's like they try to get out of it in weird ways.
Yeah.
Ugh, that's just so sad that,
I know.
there's so many games to play. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is just like lack of resources, like them just trying to spread when they don't have anything to spread. And
Yeah.
I don't know if Lauren's the right person to ask about this, but I've been meaning to dig in just sort of like what the dismantling of how that's gonna impact. Like my understanding is a lot of the special ed funds are federally distributed to the states and then to the children. And
Yeah.
so I don't know what that looks like.
They still should be getting the funding. It's appropriated by Congress, so regardless of the Department of Education and how it's functioning. But again, I think that it doesn't cover everything. Like we're seeing that in Wakefield, like it covers only a portion of it, and it is what we call in municipal finance an unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
So they're mandated by law to deliver services to ensure the child meets the needs of meet the curriculum, but the schools are not reimbursed both through the federal government or the state at a significant rate in order to cover it all. So that's why you have this like, well, can we get away with this over here? Not a malicious way, but it's the limitation of resources. And I think that's my concern to like children like ours are the ones that they're going to try to skimp around because they tend to have kids who have
More
probably
severe.
a lot more significant needs. And that's a reality who they're spending a lot of money on. That's the challenge in this process.
See, Teray, you can just lead the meeting. You don't even
No,
need to. It's great.
I didn't even not notice stuff. I guess it's like duress and it's all coming out. I'm like, well,
But it is, I would say, especially now and future with less funding, sadly, our kids are there's going to be more pushback on servicing kids who need less services,
yes.
which is scary in the bigger picture.
Have you heard, Lauren, anything about, so I was talking about like the dismantling of ed, but like Truby raised a really good point about, like legally Congress appropriates dollars for this, but the Trump administration has not been distributing those dollars. Um, have you heard anything about how that is affecting or anticipated to affect public school networks? Was it LEAs
No.
and SEAs, like the local education agencies and
No, I was talking to well, Boston Public Schools is a different beast altogether. But no, I was talking to someone in Lexington and they say they're worried, but they are not changing anything. And Lexington is heavily supports kids in all range of needs. And they seem to think the funding is just going to keep coming. I'm more skeptical, but I have no idea.
The funding, so yes, there's the risk of funding being delayed. I think reality is like we live in the world we're watching, we see what's going on in different realms. But if it's appropriated by Congress, there are going to be legal actions, and this was called a mandamus action, where a judge can compel the federal government to make the distribution. So I
But
think,
that's happened.
but yeah, but what I'm most concerned about is if Congress decreases the funding going forward. That's
Yes.
because then you can't compel the federal government to make a distribution if it's been decreased. I think
Right. I
that is
think
a
it's the
larger risk.
future funding that's more
Yes,
worrisome than the back
yes,
funding.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
I mean,
It's a
that's the case,
legitimate
like,
concern. It's
right.
like,
We get funding from EEC, which is like the preschool. Every preschool gets some
yeah,
amount of time. We get a tiny amount of funding, and they are already saying that they're worried that the money that money will be less and less and less
yeah,
because there's less funding for preschools.
yes,
Mhm.
that's a challenge. Yeah.
But Grace, so you saw the answer to your question is you can always ask to do a reevaluation ahead of time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Sorry. Other questions, or you guys can just ask Teray the real lawyer questions.
If I learn something new, I'll send it over to you all. But
Yes, for
I'm looking
sure.
at the map. I'm like, I forgot I'm on pickup duty today.
Okay. Well, yes, and always feel free to email me questions about the process, and definitely I am happy to be a help in the process. So just email me and make sure we get to join everyone's IEP.
Can I ask one more quick question?
Yeah.
Is it, if going into kindergarten in a public school next year, in theory, would it be helpful to redo a neuropsych eval before the IEP?
It would be helpful to have one within the last 18 months. When was Liam's? It was
When he
before
had
he
three and a
started
half,
Hughes.
3.5, so it was a while ago.
So yes, because there's different tests you can do for a 5-year-old than you can
Okay.
do as a 3-year-old. And he has made progress. And for him, you want to look at those pre-academic areas as well, you want to look at all of the areas. So
Mhm.
yes, because going back to what Teray was saying, and because of our kids, they may say, well, sure, he holds a diagnosis, but it's not affecting his access of curriculum. But it is, if you look at all the areas of social emotional regulation and everything, there's more than just the academics.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So yes, and I'm happy to share, I forget who did yours, but I'm happy to share neuropsychs that we like.
I would love your recommendations if you don't mind.
Okay, yes.
If I could just follow up on that really quick. Lorenzo did his eval for ADHD less than a year ago, but
Yeah.
his eval for autism was when he was like 3.5. Should we redo that portion of it before we do his IEP meeting and all that? Or
No, because you have a more recent eval, and um you can, but I'm trying to think of what you did some testing to do the ADHD one, right?
Yeah.
That was fairly comprehensive.
Yeah.
So then I think that was comprehensive enough to validate he has 2 areas going on, and then they will do some evaluations as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think he has enough of a new update to share, here's where he needs supports.
okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, well, hope this was somewhat helpful, but feel free to email me if you have specific questions as well.
I
Thank
have
you,
one
Lauren.
Thank
quick.
you.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Lauren, I have one quick question. If we just recently got a neuro eval, though I don't have the official copy, I'm still working on that. Should we send it to Fuse as well for your records, or do we
Oh, yeah.
really only need that for the school?
No, we love to have it. Once you
Okay.
have it, I knew you were like in the process.
We got
Yeah, no,
it
we
last
love to
week.
have
We
it.
just don't actually have it. Or I have to talk to them.
I
So
mean, it takes them a while to write it up. They're always slow with the write up. But it's always helpful to us because teachers really look at, like, I read it, I kind of make it more simplistic in terms of like, all right, in terms of in the classroom, here's what this would look like. So like visual learner, verbal learner. So it's very helpful for us to see areas that we can make accommodations in the classroom.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. And then you always want to share that neuropsych. If you're doing public school, you always want to share the neuropsych with the public school. Also, Sarah, if you're doing a new neuropsych, don't have it at the exact same time as the public school because you can't do the same testing. So you want to time it correctly.
Do you want to time it before the public school process so they can have that? I'm assuming so it wouldn't invalidate
Yeah,
it.
I like if
Okay.
you're paying money, you want to get the best testing with your
Yeah.
money.
Okay.
So ideally before or 3 months after.
Wait, say that again. Why? For insurance?
No,
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 it's the
because
measures, right?
right.
Yeah.
So like a cognitive test for Liam, you cannot do the same cognitive test within 3 months. So either you want to do yours ahead of time, your private one because you're paying money and it's going to be better, or you tell them we're about to have a neuropsych, so please don't use the whisk. So you can hold it for your neuropsych and let them do other testing.
Oh,
So
okay.
you just want to time it and tell them what you're doing, or it messes up your of what testing you can do through your own neuropsych.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you just tell me when it is, and I'll like if you get a neuropsych testing and but you're not in a reeval year, are you? Maybe
S-
you are.
For what? The IEP or
Yeah.
for? Well, so I just got an email actually from Andover saying that they, in like 2 weeks, want to just hold a very brief meeting, she said, but she does want the teachers to attend just
That's
to
fine.
like
It's only if you're in
confirm.
a eval year.
But she said that then we'll have another one in the spring to actually like set goals. So it was like almost like I'll send you what she sent me. It was
Okay, but
confusing.
that's fine. That's nothing to do like when Christine was talking about when it's a brand new
Oh,
IEP or you're at the 3 year eval
yeah,
time, then you don't want to converge the testing.
right.
So it
Yes,
doesn't sound
correct.
like you're in that.
No, because his testing was a year ago at the public school.
Oh, fine. Oh, yeah, yeah, right. So we're
Yeah.
nowhere near that. So
Yeah.
that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys and see you soon.